Okay, everybody, we're back. Now we're going to be looking at making our own variables that we can control in whatever way we want to. We don't have to necessarily make it mouse controlled because then we're depending on the user to control it. What if we want our program to control the movement of something? So I'm going to simplify this program. If you want to keep the previous things we were doing, you're welcome to just start a new program and copy things over. But these videos will be here for you. So, most of that stuff was just kind of playing around, and we had a good time with it. But I'm going to get rid of everything except the line. No, wait, everything but the ellipse. I'm going to keep the ellipse. And that's right back to the beginning, right? That's when we started doing things. So, kind of sad ellipse, right? So sad it's not animated, despite this being drawn at such high rates. It's not animated because it's not changing, right? We're just drawing the same picture each 60th of a second, which is boring. So I want to put a variable in here, but I don't want the mouse coordinate. I want my own special number that I will change with a program. So check this out. This is huge, big news for you to see. Turns out that right before void setup is a place for you to make your own variables. Define your own variables here. And the way you define a variable is you choose the type, and right now we're only going to know one type, so it's going to look pretty much the same each time, but just know that you can change. And we're going to also give it a name. So my types for now is always going to be int. Int stands for integer. So that means that in this variable you can store any integer. So integers are non-decimal numbers. So like 0, 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3, and so on. But not 0.5 or -0.3 or something like that. So only the integers can go in here. And I'm going to give it a name like x. And then I'm going to give it a semicolon. There we go, we just made a variable. We made x, the variable x. And this is, by default, its value is 0. So check it out. If I was to put the variable x inside of my x coordinate, where is it going to draw it? Where is it going to draw it? It's going to draw the circle at 0, 300, right? It's 300 down, the y coordinate is 300, but the x coordinate is 0 because x equals 0 right now. That's the default value. Now you can set the starting value at any point. I'll show you how you do it. So in setup, if I want to set the starting value, this is where you want to do it, in setup. We're setting the scene up, right? We're going to position it where we want to position it. So that's a good place for setup. So you just do this, x equals, let's say 200. So check out this, it's called syntax, I guess, like what this looks like. I'm not sure what's happening with my zoomer, but my zoomer ain't working. I'm not too sure. I think it's my touch screen. My touch screen is a little bit messed up. Let's try again. Technology, man. I tell you. Okay, here we go. Oh, I got it. Okay. So look at the syntax. This is not meant to be an equation, just so you know. We're not saying is x equal to 200. The equal sign is saying make x 200. We are saying x, you are now 200. Make it equal to 200. This is almost like an action we're taking. We are changing its value. We're changing the value of x. So now, when we run this, you can see that it's moved. It's now at 200. I could set its starting value at 400 if I want. I could put it over there. I can make it 600. I could do whatever I want, and I can change where it's going to be. That's not that exciting, though, because you could have just done that here, right? I could be typing in that number here and changing it. But this does tell me where I want to start. And let's say I do want to start in the center. Fantastic. It's going to be back at the center. There it is. So now that I have a starting value, I can, in the draw function, change the value every frame. So remember, the draw function is happening every 1/60th of a second. It's like bam, 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 draw, 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 so fast, drawing many, many pictures over the course of even 1 second. In 1 second, it draws 60 pictures. So what I can do is I can also in addition to drawing pictures, I can put some math into my code. And that means that the value of x can change from one frame to the next. So that means our ellipse can be in different places from one frame to the next. So look at how you do that. This is so exciting. You can do a little bit of math. The way you can add to a variable is like this. You can say x equals x plus 1. So remember, this is not an equation, right? There is no number that equals itself plus 1, right? 99 does not equal 100. That's because this is not an equation. So this is what this is saying is, hey, whatever x was, we're replacing it with itself plus 1. So in frame 0, it's going to be 300. And it's going to draw this at 300, 300. But then it's going to say, not 300 anymore, now you're going to be 300 plus 1. So the next frame here, that's going to be 301. And then we're going to replace 301 with 301 plus 1, which is 302. And then it's going to draw the next ellipse at 302. And so on and so on. It's going to go all the way to, as large as an int possibly can be inside of a computer. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to run it, and there goes our ellipse. See, it's not controlled by the mouse. It's just going, and it's gone. It's totally taken off, leaving behind a very cool pattern, which I like a lot. You might wonder, what is this streak? Remember, if we're not clearing the background each time, it's just going to leave behind all the old ellipses. So let's do the background. Let's do a white background or something. So now let's watch. Now it just looks like the circle is majestically traveling across the screen. La 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 la, there it goes, goodbye. And it's gone. It's gone forever. If we want to change where it starts, it's in setup, right? I'm going to change it. I'm going to be like, no, you're going to start at 0 now. You're starting over here. And it's going to go on forever. So let's, oops, I pressed the wrong one. Oh, I guess it worked anyways. See now, see how it started on this side? And it's traveling across the screen. Eventually it'll be bon voyage, see you later, and gone forever. So variables are pretty great. We can control the speed as well. How do we control the speed? I can tell you can see where the starting value changes, but what part of this is the speed? So the speed is actually how big that number is. If you're only traveling 1 pixel per frame, that's a lot slower than traveling 5 pixels per frame. So now instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 every frame, we're going to go 5, 10, 15, 20. It'll be 5 times as fast. Here, I'll show you. I'll run. Boom. Whoa, it's so fast. Awesome, right? So we can control speed, we can control starting point, and we can control what argument is actually controlled by this variable. Now, I'm going to do something different. I am going to now put x back to 300, and I'm going to say, well, now this is controlled by x. And my brain hurts a little bit when I do that. I'm like, that's the y coordinate. How dare you put x? Not you, me. I'm saying to me, how dare I put x in the y coordinate? That doesn't make sense. So check it out. You can actually rename your variables. If you right-click on a variable, do you see the very bottom option there? It says rename. So I'm going to choose a new name, y. How? Rename. So now it just automatically changed it everywhere to be y. Oh, that's so nice. So what do you think is going to happen now? Well, now y is our variable. Y is in the y argument. And look at that. We got increasing by 5. So that means it's going to start at 0 and it's going to go down. So now we're controlling the vertical position. Crazy. What else can we do? And I should just mention, by the way, you could have named this anything and it would have controlled the y. Let me just make sure that's really clear. I'm going to rename this to something completely different. I'm going to rename it Len, my name. So now the variable Len, it's called Len. So what does that mean? What does it control? Well, the name doesn't mean what it controls, right? It's what argument slot you put it in that means what that variable controls. I just like to match those up so that it makes sense in my head, but you can technically put it anywhere, and it's what argument slot you put it in that controls what it's going to change in the actual running program. So here, just to prove it, it's called len now, but it's still the y coordinate that's controlling, because that variable is plugged into the y argument slot. Yeah? Yes. I know you get this. Well, and if you don't, please don't feel bad at all. Just send me a message right on Teams, and maybe just kind of play around with it a bit. Okay, I got two more things. I want to plug it into width and height as well. You can probably guess what's going to happen, but I don't want you to have to guess. Maybe I should actually just get you to try it out and see what happens. I'm going to change it to be called W, just so this makes sense. I'm going to stick it at 300, and I'm going to stick this as W. And now we're going to see our ellipse growing horizontally. Yeah, that's right. It's going to start at 0, and it's going to get bigger and bigger. So let's run it, and we can see it's growing. And it will keep growing, and at some point it's going to be so fat that we won't be able to notice it's growing anymore. But it's still technically growing and growing and growing. So that's going to just turn to a rectangle at some very large value for W. But it'll keep going. And last but not least, you could stick it in the height. I bet you can imagine that. What if we stuck it in background? We can stick it in background. I'm having a lot of fun. I hope you are too. I'll stick it in background. So I'm going to maybe change it just by 1 each time. It's named W. Is that okay? Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. You can name it W. It'll still control going from 0 all the way to 255 for white. And it went over 255. Ooh, that sucks because now it's turning blue. But we're going to talk in another video about how we can stop the variable from going beyond. So yeah, W is not a great name for color, right? So I can rename this a more descriptive name. It works, but variable names aren't really for the computer as long as they're consistent. They're more about being there for you as a programmer to make sense of your code. Because eventually you'll have 10, 15 variables easy in a program. So you got to give them good names. So I'm going to call this one, I would call it color, but that's actually taken by a keyword in processing. I'm going to call it gray. Or maybe it's G for gray. So that makes a little bit more sense. So now it's still going to do the same thing. The name didn't change what it does, but it, to me, makes more sense. Okay, so next video, what we're going to do is we're going to define some limits for these variables and make decisions based on these variables. So we're going to let our circle go across the screen, but when it reaches a certain value, we're going to be like, hey, well, let's make a decision. Let's change it in a different way. And we can make this circle like reset back to the beginning of the screen or something to make an endlessly looping type of animation. Okay, so see you next video.